What a way.
All right, so let's start by
Clearing the
setting
air.
the table of the mystery. So about a week ago-ish.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe a little shorter even. I think it was like the latter part of the week because I'd just gotten back into town was kind of some of that context, right? Like I was gone camping.
I feel like I need to add drone music for this.
So I came back Wednesday morning to the office. So I was just here for Wednesday and Thursday. And I think as early as Wednesday, the string lights in my office, which are remote controlled, changed color all of a sudden. They were purple. In fact,
they
I want to say
were just kind of a casual whitish yellow.
yeah, it's like LED, right? So the warm white, if you will, which is weirdly like a combination of like orange and green, whatever. But actually, whenever I came into my office, they were on and purple, and so already I was like, okay, someone maybe just like opened the door and hit the little remote control. Fine, cute. But then they changed again, / turned off at the end of the day. And so by Thursday, they had changed once again. It felt like, because it's two strings attached to each other, I had two remotes. One of them is mounted, and that's the one that I use, and the other one is stashed away, apparently even from myself. So I was like, okay, a classic office prank.
Hey.
That someone has taken my other remote, which would be weird that they would even know about it, but you know, we have a cunning kind of crew here, so I wasn't going to put it past anybody. And the most likely candidates, of course, then, of stealing my other remote and messing with my lights appeared to be you or Hannah. Now,
it does feel like something that we would do.
Not to undersell Alex's capacity, because I think there's a storm brewing. And give it a month, if that, and Alex is going to be, I think, a pretty formidable force, prank-wise.
He shall be a force to be reckoned.
But, so anyway, Thursday, I confronted y'all, and I tried maybe to strong-arm it, of like, give me my remote, and say, not even like, hey, do you know? And y'all, I was met with genuine confusion. Also, Hannah's niece and nephew were very eager to frame y'all as well. They were like, true. They did it. We're going to sell
and Hardy
you
were
out.
Just ready to be like, they did it.
And I said, I know they did. And so I'm going to figure it out. So after y'all left Thursday, because I was here all day getting ready for sermon prep, etc., and so I broke into your office, so apologies, a little beanie, and started snooping around a little bit, and didn't have to snoop far because on your desk there's a white remote, very similar and from a distance identical to my remote. And so I was like, John, come on, you're better than this, man. That's not even trying. But then I looked at it and it is slightly different and it's for your little LED lamp. And so I was like, oh, okay, because I clicked on and your lamp came on and I said, oh, okay, it's just that. But then I went back to my office and I realized that your remote from here still reaches. It's the same company. It's the same kind of remote.
Stop it.
Yeah. And so, because then I was like, wait, hold on. John's lamp is purple. And I changed the color and it turned green. I went back to my office and my lights were green. I came back in here. I turned off your lamp. I went back to my office. My lights were off. So maybe in the spirit of the sermon, part of the core of the sermon of like,
my mouth has been open this entire time.
All of our lives and destinies are intertwined with one another, and care for ourselves is care for our neighbor, and care for our neighbor is care for ourselves. At a much lower stakes level, our lights are intertwined. They are connected.
Well,
so apologies
welcome to Sunday
for that.
Plus. The mystery has been solved. I am in shock.
Yeah, and again, apologies for coming in so hot. With such paranoia and an attitude that people would be out to get me. Not the case.
When we were heading out, I actually defended your position. I was like, hey, look, I get it. When something so trivial as a remote, but it controls something that makes you happy, is missing, and you're like, I think I know you did it. And like I allow myself a little too much frustration in those moments. So no harm, no foul, my friend.
I will say too, I mean, I think part of what set me off is that someone had certainly gone in my office because my TV was also on. So unless there had been some kind of like power surge that weirdly flipped it on,
Seems unlikely.
But that's why I think that's also what kind of set me up to be suspicious. Not superstitious, but a little stitious.
What is that from? It's from something.
The Office.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Michael Scott said that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
Yeah. So you started off by reading a passage from The Grapes of Wrath, which, out of context, I thought was quite brilliant. Because the first service I heard you doing it, I was like, "What is happening? This is super cool."
Oh, yeah.
And you're just painting this snapshot, and then I just loved the notion of the assigned reading and applying that. So I was kind of curious what some of your other favorite assigned readings from high school were.
Yeah, the other
Or non-favorites, ones that you hated. You're like, that book is stupid.
Yeah, that's tough because so much of that is like informed by the attitude of like by virtue of being in school, right?
And that age, yeah.
Yeah. So like for instance, Tale of Two Cities in freshman year felt like such a slog, even though it would like if I revisited Tale of Two Cities, I'm sure I would love it and like all the themes, etc. Like totally with it. And also, you can't even say that it's like especially boring because it was written as a serial, and Dickens was paid, by the installment or whatever. And so, like every chapter is a cliffhanger, which especially as a comic book lover, I'm like, dude, this is to be continued.
Well, it's like that's like the kind of the modern age of cinematic television shows that was started by The Sopranos.
Yeah,
and like now everything, so many shows operate that way now. Every episode at the end is a cliffhanger,
right?
To make you want to watch the next episode,
for sure.
Unlike like sitcoms and soap operas where it's not quite that. It's just another part of the story or an isolated story that could technically work in the big grand scheme, or you could just watch it by itself. But the whole cliffhanger thing is, I don't think I remember that's how that operated, that each chapter literally ended with a
right. Yeah. What are they going to do? I don't know though. Maybe I was just like, cause English was always my favorite subject. And so I think I was always predisposed to like the books, even the books that the other students like hated, right? So even like Ethan Frome in sophomore year, which is like a weird book and controversial because of the relationship in it or whatever. I was like, I don't know. It's pretty moody.
Read that one.
It's like it's almost like it's almost like Lolita Jr. in some ways, of like this guy is just like super moody and melancholy, and it takes place in winter, and he falls in love with his cousin because when books were being written at that time,
that was fine. I guess
that was fine, right? But also like most of the arc of the story is like it's not fine, and that's like the tension or whatever. So, it's all just very melancholy, and I was like, I love the mood of this book. Like, I don't love the topic maybe, but it's and we read it during winter, so it all like kind of gelled, right? So
a little bit of a hat on the hat there.
Yeah, but Poisonwood Bible though, senior year was a big one. In fact, I still have Poisonwood Bible on my shelf, Barbara Kingsolver, and that was great. It's all about in the 40s or 50s maybe, a Baptist missionary family that goes to like a secluded African village, and basically the way that the father's insistence and like fundamentalism makes the whole family like fall apart and not be able to even survive in that setting. And then Crime and Punishment is the other big like standout.
I remember To Kill a Mockingbird was one that I really enjoyed. I know that's probably like that's everybody's answer.
Sure, yeah.
I remember not liking The Great Gatsby the first time I read it.
Yeah.
I was like, this is boring and slow. Yeah. And I kind of don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah, our teacher was brilliant because Great Gatsby was our for fun book after AP testing. So that was also junior year. And so it was in that zone of the end of school year where everyone's already asking internally or otherwise, like, what's the point? Why are we still here for another 3 weeks? And our teacher was like, hey, I get that. Gatsby is short. We're going to do some like basic analysis, but the AP test is over. So I'm not going to I still want you to get something out of it, but we're going to go at a good pace. And so, yeah, it was really good. So, and then just a couple years later, the Baz Luhrmann movie came out. And so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a good movie. The whole notion to do like jazz fused with modern hip hop was for the soundtrack was pretty brilliant.
It's awesome.
That's a very Baz Luhrmann move right there.
Oh yeah, I love Boz, man. He's got style.
This is wild. This
great.
is the second Sunday Plus podcast where we've talked about Baz Luhrmann.
Really? I missed the first one. Is that where y'all talking about Moulin Rouge?
No, we actually were
Elvis?
talking about that one song he did. Everybody's free to wear sunscreen.
I am not familiar with that song. It sounds like
It's just him talking for like 3.5 minutes, and he's like giving a bunch of advice.
Okay.
For nonstop, and it was like the song of the summer in like 1999, and it's just music, and he's like giving. It may have been a commencement speech, but I don't think it was. It was just kind of like in that style where it's just this series of randomly strung together pieces of advice.
Yeah.
And the reason it got brought up was because in that he said, keep personal notes and cards that are written to you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
that's something that you
that's something
do.
that I took to heart for whatever reason.
sure.
And I remember in '99, I was like, well, you know what, Boz? I think I will. And
Of all the things you've said,
and yeah,
gonna take that one.
not gonna do the sunscreen thing all the time because I like a good base tan. But
Well, and just giving that title, it does sound like it would be a track on like a children's CD.
It was
like very
it was
Barney. Like let's get
everybody-
excited about putting on sunscreen. Like
everybody's free to wear sunscreen was a cool thing, man. Like
Yeah.
they back in the day, Kiss FM was blasting that thing every day.
Amazing.
It was great. But yeah, so classic. Another reference to Baz Luhrmann.
amazing.
Yeah,
So
what a creative guy. I will say Romeo plus Juliet though,
yeah.
fantastic.
I know that was another. I mean, Leo DiCaprio, young Leo in like a full suit of armor, or at least like chest up.
Yeah,
Cool move. Cool move.
it's a cool move. I mean, it tracks. It was good. All right, so here's some other things that I wrote down. So you started off by going Grapes of Wrath, and then you told the beautiful, unexpected story of Gonzo.
Gonzo
and
the
he
Great.
was a Fraggle named
Or Frackle.
Frackle
Yeah,
named
which
Snarl.
is I mentioned, or as I was going through the outline with my wife, she was like, "That's wild that they had Frackles and then Fraggles," and I was like, "Listen,
Yeah,
if it
Fraggle
ain't-
Rock
If it
and-
ain't broke, don't fix it. I guess like just it's like it's like change the assignment a little bit so the teacher doesn't notice that
I'm
you
gonna add this extra
copied.
spice in here, and now
Right.
it's a new thing.
Yeah, so yeah,
And
Gonzo.
so the key thing, the key phrase you kept bringing up was "What's my purpose?" Right, or something. Like
yeah,
that.
or kind of just like this sort of what happens now or what just happened even.
What happens now,
And,
yeah.
and then what happens now both for your expectations of sort of the storyline, I guess, that you find yourself a part of, but then also what happens with me specifically, right? And the way kind of that our value and the way that we see ourselves is tied to kind of the storyline that we even subconsciously see. So like the events going on around us. So like Gonzo imagining, kind of personifying this little puppet or Muppet, if you will, of like, oh, cool, like I'm in this little movie and that's fun. And then being stashed away in a storage closet and felt almost very like Toy Story in a way too, right? Like the dusty
yeah.
old toys
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
back
yeah.
of the shelf of like, oh, okay, so like I guess I'm worthless now. So why am I even still around? And then kind of bringing that into Peter's story of like, okay, I was kind of putting all my eggs in this Jesus basket, and that seems to have gone awry. And then even with the mysterious nature of Jesus reappearing post-resurrection, it's not inspiring, at least at the start, a lot more confidence to kind of pick that basket back up. And
Yeah,
like,
you always
find
kind of
yourself.
forget, or at least I did, how many of the more common, call it even popular stories of Jesus engaging with the disciples happened after the resurrection.
Yeah.
After he died and rose. And like these encounters and these like iconic things that took place happened after he rose from the dead. I was just
Yeah.
like, yo, I didn't remember that was afterward. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I know I'm often critical of, I'll joke about having beef with John and his gospel versus I'm a Mark guy, but I mean, credit where credit is due. I guess I see why we keep John's gospel around. I mean, you get a lot
I
of
love
that
the Gospel
detail.
of John because, and I've said this on this podcast before, but I heard it referred to when I was younger as the hippie gospel.
Sure, right,
So
yeah.
the first three in the synoptics, you have this is what Jesus did, and then you have John's gospel, and this is who Jesus is.
Yeah.
That's how I've heard it said, and I still to this day kind of repeat that because I like it, and I feel like it's pretty spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see that through, I mean, even like with this message, right, of like the tying of our identity with Jesus's, right? Like if you know who Jesus is, then you know that your identity and your work of like loving others and embodying that. And even just the way that John uses certain words and verbs, right? I mean, like you said, who Jesus is, that question of identity. John is where we get the I'm the way, the truth, the life. Like Jesus continually making these I am statements of characterizing himself and affirming who he is, what he's here to do, but then also kind of how and where we fit into that puzzle. Because that's also where we get the whole discourse of, I'm going to leave you the advocate, the paraclete, the Holy Spirit. And again, this like post-resurrection world is where it's like, okay, Jesus gave us a heads up about this. And we don't know what that looks like now. It's this very squishy, kind of nebulous question mark time. So, yeah.
So one of the things that I was started to think about, because this is how my brain works, but so when you were reading the scripture and the whole, feed my sheep, tend to my sheep, all these things, I'm like, oh man, he's really making a point. I was like, yeah, I've never been that close to sheep outside of like going to a petting zoo or something.
Right.
I don't encounter sheep on the daily.
Right.
And so I was like, that is a bit of a specific and albeit dated way to express a desire to do something. I was trying to think of some kind of a modern equivalent, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make Kevin do it tomorrow on the podcast.
Nice, yeah. I don't know, and even as you're saying that, it's interesting because Peter was not a shepherd.
No,
right?
he was a fisherman.
Yeah, if Jesus were saying this to David, if we had like a time warp situation, that would be, more appropriate, right? Because David was a shepherd. Like he is kind of speaking his language. But now Jesus is talking to a fisherman using.
But shepherds are far more common in day to day because every city in that time frame had shepherds, had fishermen, had potters, had like these more common roles that you see. And because the world felt much smaller back then, because you're not going to really go that far out of your hometown, because it's very hard and difficult and to do that, and the likelihood that you die is much higher. But so I'm just trying to think, all right, what's the equivalent? What is it?
Yeah. It's tricky, but also given that I at a very base level, I'm not committed to this, but I'm spitballing. I'm throwing spaghetti at the dartboard here. You can't talk to me without me talking about my dog, Toffee Crunch.
Hey.
And Mac and I were in a predicament of, we were on vacation, as we discussed earlier, and needed someone to watch Toffee because my in-laws had done that before, and then their dogs weren't getting along and stuff, so we had to find someone new. So we shout out to the Evans family here at Creekwood. Took her out to kind of a trial run because they have two dogs. So we're like, all right, let's go see if they'll get along, if that is a livable situation. And so the Evans graciously watched Toffee for about a solid week. And so, but that idea, because you're talking about like cities and their flocks and all this, right? And one thing that I think gets lost in translation through the centuries, right, is that like shepherds are not tending their own sheep, right? They are tending the herds and flocks that like belong to other people or another person, right? And so in a similar way, I don't know, is the modern equivalent of tending sheep.
Hey,
dog
watch
sitting.
my dog.
Yeah, right. And I think, on several levels, no, right? Like I do not profit from Toffee Crunch, for instance.
I was going to say that because there is some sense of benefit to the sheep, like now I'm thinking school teacher, maybe.
Sure, right.
Teach my children.
Right, exactly, right. Yeah, because it's like it's the tending, the nurturing, the feeding. Now feeding seems like, like baseline need, right? But I think it is safe to say or to extrapolate that it is a matter of nurturing. It's like a holistic care for these sheep.
So even feed my children,
teacher,
take care of my children, and so
even like like teacher or even like godparent situation, right?
I'm trying to think if there's references to babysitters in scripture or
squire my children.
Squire.
if it were
that's
the year,
a word that I use on.
If it were the year 1450, squire my children. So
I just it's so interesting because I regularly find myself reading something and I'm like, that doesn't really apply anymore because we don't do that or we don't experience that in day-to-day life. And so I often find myself trying to figure out some modern equivalent to what scripture is referring to when there is some outdated reference, or not outdated may not be the right word, but an archaic thing that doesn't have the same impact or meaning that it does today.
Right.
Now we can dive into it, but as a child, like when we're hearing these stories, like I don't really get the whole notion of feed my sheep. Like you hear about shepherds and stuff all the time because of the Christmas story and all these things that we hear about David out in the field with his lyre and just all these things. Yeah. But outside of church, like we're not all coming across a bunch of pastures with sheep and then some dude out there with his big hook thing and just, it's like, that's not really a modern thing that we experience.
Well, and if anything, right, you get the the negative connotation of sheep too, right? Like sheep has become like a condescending idea, right? Like wake up, sheeple.
Yeah, yes, you sheeple.
Yeah,
you don't know anything.
Just go where you go, and you can't be a free thinker such as I, right?
Well, and I think that same concept was intentional. That it's like sheep aren't concerned, and they do follow where they're led, and they're not really, filling themselves with anxiety or anything, and they trust this shepherd or whatever, and so that I get that, but is there a healthy modern equivalent?
Right? Yeah, I don't.
Outside of like a good teacher teaching like a preschool teacher or something, because at that point, like those kids really are not doing much thinking for themselves. They're just kind of either being distracted by whatever, the air, or they're following their teacher's direction.
Yeah, right, yeah. And whether it's a teacher, even like a mentor, or even I just think about like, I don't know, modern life has just so many elements, so many aspects. But like I think about the guys who work at City Tires off of Northwest Highway. I'm not a cars guy, but whenever something's wrong, I know that I am but a sheep in that situation. I have no say-so. And so I almost wonder if like, you're
at the mercy of the experts.
I'm at the mercy of City Tires, and they have not steered me wrong once. Pun intended, I guess. Pun not intended, but accepted. And and so I don't know. I wonder, if there's anything to that as well, right? Is like be the trustworthy source, right? If it's feed my sheep, tend my sheep, it's also,
Well, there's a lot of different things like that where you have to trust an authoritative figure, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a car mechanic, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a plumber, somebody who's doing something because you yourself cannot. And we are at the mercy of that constantly now. That is for some people, it's as simple as a chef. Like I can't cook anything. I will screw up Easy Mac. And so I just pay somebody to do it for me every day.
Well, I think that's something really...
But you're trusting all of those roles on how to like let those things guide your life and not have to put worry in there.
Yeah. Well, I think that's encouraging to everyone, or I would hope that would be encouraging to everyone in terms of like career versus vocation, right? Because even later in the letters and stuff, right, there's talk about how, we've talked about teachers, and I think it's Paul in one of Paul's letters that he talks about, teachers will be judged more harshly, more severely, held to a higher standard. But whenever we think about it as far as like, any given trade, we're at the mercy of experts or people with more experience or whatever. Well, even if your job is, working a desk job or answering phone calls or whatever, there's still like plenty of scenarios in which you are in a position to care for people by virtue of your knowledge or experience.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense, right? And
Yeah.
so in the same way, I think that's like a really, I don't know, that's a really cool thought on vocation, that it's not just for teachers, right? It's not just them who are like held to a high standard, but rather it's less about the punitive sense of like, so you better do a good job, and more of the empowering sense of like,
They just have more opportunities to care for arguably our most vulnerable,
for sure,
and can't care for themselves, and so we just put a high price on or high value on what they do, and as we should.
Yeah, for sure.
So
but
I
yeah,
get
just
that.
that idea that everyone is in some position to be a good teacher, right? Even if that is just being able to graciously answer someone who wants to know what aisle the kibble is on or whatever, right? So yeah,
I do need my kibble.
yeah, Nerds-Gummy clusters are kibble for people. Yeah.
So one of the things I also thought about, this is a little bit of an offshoot here, is, you know, the primary characters in Muppets, as you brought up, would be Kermit,
Yep.
would be Fozzie, would be Miss Piggy, would be Gonzo, and that's pretty much the primary.
Those are kind of your core four, right? You've got, Pepe the King Prawn has been around for a good bit now. You've got, but then everyone else, is a little bit auxiliary, right? Scooter gets pretty close to the spotlight, even though he's a backstage guy.
There's some that are like really iconic, like
Beaker,
the two old men.
Oh,
Beaker,
Statler and Waldorf.
They're iconic because they're easy to parody.
Yeah. Oh, Animal, I guess, actually. If there was a fifth, I'd say Animal.
Animal, yeah.
But he's part of like the Electric Mayhem, which also is kind of...
Well, like things like Animal,
more.
In some of the more iconic ones, like Muppets Christmas Carol, Animal really doesn't play a major role.
Yeah, I guess he's just in the scene where the Electric Mayhem is playing at the party, I think.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's it. I think Animal just is one of the more iconic ones.
Right, like visually.
His fame came probably a little bit later than Kermit and Piggy and all them. But
yeah, for sure. I think Muppet Movie might have been his big... I mean, literally big. There's that scene where like giant animal. Anyway,
so I was wondering if there's any other things to take away from like four personality types possibly there.
Yeah.
Do you think there was some intention behind Jim Henson saying, well, we're going to have our wise leader in Kermit. We are going to have, his partner in crime, but just more eccentric, Miss Piggy. Was there a storyline or characterization that he felt like, I need these four things fulfilled, and then these are going to be the Muppets that fulfill them? Or was it just, these are just four random characters?
Yeah. I think, conscious or not, have you heard this like theory or seen these like charts of like 4 character casts?
I am going to say no.
And okay. Are you saying no just so that we can talk about it, but you have actually? Is that what?
I might realize...
Okay.
5 seconds
like
into whatever you're about to say,
so,
that yes, but...
Think about the examples I've seen are Sex and the City, Golden Girls, Fantastic Four, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and now I think the way you've named even kind of the 4 core Muppets all kind of follow similar tropes, kind of across fiction.
Leonardo as Kermit the Frog.
Exactly. Leader.
We have Raphael as going to be Gonzo, because he's the
Or
intact.
I would say... Raphael is
Fozzie?
Piggy.
Oh, Piggy?
Yeah. I mean, she's like very hot-tempered, right?
Oh,
Kinda
yeah.
shoots from
Raphael is the
hip,
hothead.
Right?
So the silly one is going to be Fozzie, so that's going to be Michelangelo.
And then Donatello is Gonzo, which, the wisdom of Gonzo, you have to dig a little bit.
Well,
however,
when you get into his role as Charles Dickens in A Muppet Christmas Carol, which is arguably the most famous of the Muppet movies.
Yeah.
And like he does have this kind of gracious wisdom about him. However, like in other like Muppet Treasure Island, he's a very different character.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and also given the theme song of Ninja Turtles that Donatello simply does machines, well, cannons are machines, stunts usually involve machines, so Gonzo is a good fit. But you look at Fantastic Four, right? You've got Mr. Fantastic, the smart leader. You have Sue, who's usually actually driven by rage and
emotion.
Protection, like protection of her family. You got
Johnny Storm,
the
who's going to be the kind of hot-headed, silly.
You're Michelangelo, right?
Yeah,
and then the thing, who is
Ben Grimm.
Yeah, this kind of more introspective, but still like obviously very capable like character. And so kind of these four personality types of kind of the straight man is always part of it, right? You're Kermit, you're Mr. Fantastic, you're whoever that is in Golden Girls and Sex and the City. I can't say I'm super familiar, sadly, but
yeah, I mean, I had a roommate in college who was very into Sex and the City, and so I think the main girl
a bit before
would be
my
your
time.
Michelangelo.
You know,
I mean, not your
some of you at home know if
Leonardo.
you're a Miranda or
Samantha.
a Samantha. Yeah, I don't know. So,
Oh my!
but yeah, so I do think though, yeah, that there's definitely, it's always a matter of how much time you want to commit to me pontificating on the Muppets, right? But there's a basic order in the Muppets of like, you have your order Muppets and your chaos Muppets, and Kermit is like the proto order Muppet, and Animal is like the proto chaos Muppet, right? And everyone falls in between. And the beauty of the Muppets is that they all need each other. My favorite depiction of it is Muppets in Space, a very slept on and forgotten 1999 venture, I believe, that is also very Gonzo centric. So a lot of great stuff there. But my favorite element is the simplest, which is at the start of the movie, all the Muppets are living together in a boarding house. And they do this whole musical number, as the Muppets are wont to do. And one of my favorite Muppets is Robin the Frog, Kermit's little nephew, who's about this big. And
Did
I
he
always
play Tiny Tim?
Yes, yeah, Tiny Tim and Muppet Christmas Carol. One of his best and like biggest, most well-known Muppet Show spots was he sings "Halfway Down the Stairs," which is based on a poem by A.A. Milne, creator of Winnie the Pooh. And anyway, he is just truly precious. He's just this cute little frog that I always joke, but not joke, that I would do anything for. I would kill or die for Robin the Frog. But I love that Robin is like there with Kermit in the boarding house, knowing that all these other Muppets and their antics drive his uncle crazy. And yet Robin is learning that that is like what community looks like. That he's like, why do you still... He has every reason to wonder why his uncle is like continually putting himself in this position. And he's also receiving the answer to that all the time of like, oh, because these are his friends, because this relationship is worth it. And it's just, it gets me choked up. I think it's beautiful. I think we need to just take so many pages out of the Muppet Handbook. But
Jim Henson just really had it down.
What a guy. What a guy.
All right, well, let's close with this. I want you to give your Mount Rushmore of Muppet experiences, movies, shows, whatever. Just if somebody's going to only ever experience 4 Muppet things.
Yeah. I mean, the OG Muppet movie, 1977, I want to say. Yeah. Was it 77? Could that have been? That's Star Wars I'm thinking of. Anyway, original The Muppet Movie, amazing. Muppet Christmas Carol, we've already talked about. I'm going to throw a curveball because it's going to be not... Oh, I don't know, though. It's hard. It's hard because there's another Christmas special I will give honorable mention. Can I give you an honorable mention? Is that cheating?
After
the 4. Okay. So let me put on the mount then. Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. It is, so it's a Jim Henson thing, but it is lesser known and it's amazing.
And that makes your... I mean, I'm assuming you're going to put Muppets in Space up there, and that leaves my just ever so loved Muppet Treasure Island off the mountain.
It is hard because Muppet Treasure Island is amazing.
That's my favorite.
It might not make my mount because I don't know though, because at the same time, Emmett Otter is like, he's another Christmas one, and so doubling up on Christmas. Because if you're saying Muppets too, are we counting Labyrinth and Dark Crystal?
Not quite. That's its own thing.
All right. Fair enough.
It's like Fraggle Rock. I don't count that. That's its own thing.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Okay. Then yes. Then I'm comfortable. Yeah, I'm gonna keep Emmett Otter then. And yeah, if we're not gonna consider Labyrinth or Dark Crystal, then I will go ahead and give it to Muppets in Space.
All right.
But honorable mention to Muppet Family Christmas, the hour-long Christmas special in which the Muppets, Fraggles, Sesame Street, and the Storyteller, I want to say, like all come together. Yeah, like all the Jim Henson franchises at the time
just
come
all
together at
on one screen.
Fozzie Bear's grandma's house, and it's just a warm hug. And at the very end, Jim makes a little cameo. He's washing dishes and talking to one of the Muppet, or talking to, I guess, his real life dog. And he's like, it sounds like they're having fun in there. I love when they have fun. And I
think I've seen that.
It's beautiful. It's so good. So,
well, thanks for hanging out with us. If you haven't seen Kevin preaching on Muppets and unfinished business and something else, that was yesterday. So you'll find it previous to this video. And thanks for hanging out.
Yeah.
Catch you next one. Peace.